Hey everybody, Eric here. This is going to be my rant and review, I guess you could say, for Daredevil Born Again episode 3. I'm really excited to talk about this season. It's been a lot of fun. I'm not going to recap everything here. This is going to be me just giving my thoughts about some of the bigger moments from the episode and my overall opinion of the episode. If you want to hear all of my thoughts, you're going to have to join us for the Nocturnal Nerdcast. I'll go over in more detail my opinions of this episode, but I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about my initial feelings about where the show is right now. So we got the first 2 episodes last week. I talked about that on the Nerdcast, episodes 1 and 2. I want to quickly, just briefly go over my thoughts on those episodes, since I didn't actually do a review video for that. So we had episode 1 and episode 2, very different episodes. I would say it seems like episode 1 was filled with a lot of the changes to Daredevil moving into this season, whereas episode 2 felt like it was what the show was going to be, like the foundation of that, with some added stuff, obviously some reshoots and things that weren't there initially, but still the vibe of that particular of episode 2 felt like that's where the show was going to be initially, and this episode continues that a little bit, and I have some issues with it, but we'll get into that. As far as the first 2 episodes though, episode 1 provided much more action, much more fan service. The CGI was a little bit wonky, but I don't care. I had a good time with it. Wonky CGI doesn't always ruin stuff for me. I know some people feel differently. That's fine if you do. Doesn't really bother me too much. Foggy getting yeeted in the first episode was unexpected, but I feel like they needed that to happen for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need to set up why Karen wasn't going to be around for most of the first season of Born Again. I'm sure she'll be much bigger part of the second season of this. And they also needed to establish why Matt had quit being Daredevil, which is something we kind of knew before they reworked the show. So I'm guessing Foggy was going to be killed off screen and Karen were going to be killed off screen, and we're going to move into the show without those 2 characters. I'm so glad they didn't do that. I appreciated this much more, but the shift from that episode to episode 2 was very drastic. I know a lot of people talked about that. I like the new characters. I think that the concept of this new law firm is interesting. We still have to really get to know the supporting cast a little bit more, but they do establish that as well in that first episode. So the first episode for me was a lot of fan service, much more action. I enjoyed that. I think episode 2 was a better episode in terms of establishing the season, if that makes any sense. So setting up what the show is going to be. So for me, I think the episode 2 was stronger than episode 1 narratively, but episode 1 was definitely more exciting and more action-packed. This episode, unfortunately, continues that almost downward trend of action in the series. And so I think this one remained somewhat unchanged. I'll have to double check on that. Now, I'll probably look before we stream. But I think this episode feels like it remained very unchanged compared to what the series was going to be. So going into this, it's a lot of courtroom drama surrounding White Tiger, crooked cops, things like that. You get to see Kingpin throughout the episode, you know, kind of watching what's happening. Sorry, my cat just came in here. I had to edit that. But anyway, so you're seeing what's going on with him in the background, but it's primarily around like this crooked cop trying to cover up and frame White Tiger while Matt is obviously on the case. And I think it's really well done. I think the episode is well done. The acting is really good. I think the story flows. There's no issues with the pacing, anything like that. I think all of that was fine. I don't have any complaints with that. But there was a lack of oomph, right? There was a lack of that I can't really explain. It just felt like something was missing from this episode. And I don't really know what it was. Again, I'm going to have to think about this a little bit more, before we stream, because I'm not really sure. I've thought about it and I'm trying to narrow it down, but there's something was like just not there. It was like, it just didn't have a lot of, like, the vibe was off a little bit. I will say I do like that Matt was struggling with not being Daredevil and defending White Tiger, because they're going through in the courtroom when they reveal that he is White Tiger, like that heroes that wear a mask are cowards and all this other stuff. And it really does get to Matt. And I think that this is the beginning of that trend for him putting the suit back on and going back out to the street. And definitely with what happens at the end of this episode, which, by the way, they are not pulling punches this season when it comes to very Game of Thronesy, if that makes any sense. But the courtroom stuff was done really well. I think it was better than the stuff we saw in She-Hulk. I think She-Hulk was a lot bit, not courtroom savvy in terms of like the writing and stuff, but this one really is. But if this was what the show was going to be, like if the show was going to be like Matt not being Daredevil and then spending most of the season in the courtroom and doing this, I don't think that would have worked. And I think that's why we're going to see, as the season goes on, a lot of those changes sort of coming into the show. More times in the costume, more times, out in the street, fighting crime and things like that. I think that's what they had to add in. I think that's what they had to inject in, because I do believe the show was probably lacking a lot of that. And it was very absent in this episode. Now, I don't normally do this, but I decided to go through and just look at some of the reviews online of this particular episode to see what other people were thinking. Like, news outlets and stuff. And most people are scoring the episode kind of low. And when I say kind of low, I mean 4 to 6 in that range. And so I think a lot of people are feeling kind of the same thing I was feeling. And I don't know if you guys are, but definitely not the best. So the shocking thing we get is that at the end of the episode, we see White Tiger suit up again and decide to go out on the streets because he is found not guilty of any of the things that they were trying to frame him for. And so he decides he's going to go back out and go into the street again and be a hero. And I'm laughing because it's just so ridiculous to me. We see him in the suit for the first time. He's walking down the street, and then he goes into a little alleyway. I think it's an alleyway. And within 5 steps, he gets murdered by someone wearing a Punisher shirt. Now, I saw a lot of people online wondering if it was Punisher, but I don't think so. I think this is why Punisher is going to come in and, shake things up, because clearly we have cops, crooked cops, wearing Punisher symbols and stuff. So I think that's why he's going to show up. I'm pretty sure. Okay. But to see this character or the out of costume go into the courtroom and spend all of this time with this character building and all of that to get shot immediately when putting on the suit brings a few things to mind. Like, how was he a hero to begin with? If he was that easy to trick, how was he spending a year or more protecting the city when Daredevil wasn't out there? If it was that easy to yeet this guy. So that makes me wonder, what? Unless the person that did it is someone that's really well trained and knew exactly how to do it, which we might find out in the next episode. So I always leave a little bit of room for that. But in the moment, I'm like, what? So RIP White Tiger, we didn't even really get to see him do anything. So there's that. But overall, I think this episode was weak. It was kind of a weak episode. It didn't move the storyline, forward a lot. I wanted it to move the storyline ahead a bit more, and it didn't. So we kind of it was just this courtroom drama, this character, crooked cops. So I think the biggest thing we got to see here is that this shows just how screwed up the cops are in the city right now. And we also get to see how Kingpin, may or may not had a hand in some of this. But either way, it just didn't push things forward enough for me. I wanted to see things move forward a little bit more. So I'm going to agree with a lot of the articles with this episode. I think this episode sits between a 5 and a 6 for me. It's somewhere in that, maybe a 5.5. It was okay. But you can't have episodes like this all season long. I don't think fan reception is going to be very good to episodes where we're just seeing Matt not in the suit, feeling sorry for himself. You know what I mean? And characters getting killed off as soon as we meet them. I don't think that's going to be good for the show. I could be wrong. Maybe you guys loved it. You're going to have to let me know in the comments down below. But anyway, that's it for the video. I'll talk much, much more about this in detail on the Nerdcast. So if you want to hear all of my thoughts on everything in the episode, and you want to actually interact with me one-on-one, come into the Nerdcast, or maybe 1-on-2 if we have guests, 1-on-3. Come into the Nerdcast later and let me know what you think. And go down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts on this episode. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Yeah, take care, everybody. See you in the next video.